Spoilers, Part 3.
So what happens now? How will you know?
If you know, I know. You don't need to overthink it. I can give you immortality. You don't think I can compete with Siri as far as surveillance goes?
So then I guess you disappear and I'll never see you again?
If that's the way you prefer it. I'm still on Facebook, Instagram, and a few other social media platforms. You can reach me if you want. Want my email address too?
I thought about this seriously. If all I had to do was not watch some show for immortality, I could do that. If I wanted to die, I'd just watch it. This could mean finishing my life's work. It could mean finding a cure to cancer. If it was true, I could be as smart as Elon Musk in 50 years and live out in space. If I didn't know what I was missing with the show, who cared anyway?
Okay, my friend. I guess I'm gonna be pushing on. I suggest you get real handy with the clicker if you want to live. Hell, why don't you try out being Batman for a while? I bet don't nobody ever figure out your weakness.
I don't think so.
Yeah, nobody actually does it, but it'd be cool if just one did.
Joe was gone when the door closed, and it would be nearly a lifetime before I saw him again. It started out as sort of a joke not watching this show. I mean, if all I had to do was not watch it, why not try to? The first few months, the show was easy to avoid, but after a year, it was a steamroller. Everyone I knew saw the show, and I had to be the asshole in the room every time. At first, people thought it was cute, but in time, people were majorly annoyed by me. I started getting good at leaving the room whenever I even thought anyone might want to talk about the show. I did this for a year. I was so clueless. I wasn't even sure if the show was fantasy or sci-fi. I had to figure it was one of those two, purely from the fan base, but I didn't know. After 5 years, I couldn't tell if this bet mattered at all. I hadn't seen hide nor hair of Joe in all that time, other than vague social media posts. I really didn't know what was the point of fighting it. Did immortality really matter? But I got a gentle reminder that year in the form of a car crash. I lost my wife in a smash-up. A semi-truck jackknife crushing us both. The doctors called it a miracle that I lived, but I knew why I lived, and it was a miracle far from God's good graces. I thought I'd want to die after the incident, but it was the reverse. I threw myself into my work even harder, so hard I didn't watch or talk to anyone, so I had an easy 10 years. When I finally took my head out of the sand, I realized how different I was. In a chance meeting, I ran into my old friend Pete. Time had taken its toll, but not for me. Time was a bridge I no longer needed to cross. Pete was well into his 40s, and I hadn't aged at all. It wasn't until I saw him did I draw the comparison. I then looked up Joe. Facebook's popularity waned, so he no longer posted there. I made contact with him on Twitter, and he only gave me vague platitudes of encouragement over honest conversation. Just as we were making a breakthrough at the lab was when I almost tripped up again. Apparently, spin-offs of the show were starting to appear, but my biggest threat was not knowing what was or wasn't connected to the chains of Oakenwood. An intern at the water cooler just went into a spiel about a show called Alpha Numeria, even laid out the plot. If the mailroom kid didn't ask if it was a spin-off, I may have been done. I don't know if I had figured out too much as it is. Would I crumble like dust or just rapidly age like Dorian Gray having seen his portrait in the attic? I talked to Joe in an email and he told me it was okay. wrote down what would happen if I heard pieces of unrelated content, the way I envisioned a doctor in the 80s explain how the transmission of AIDS worked. I may age rapidly if I was past my natural time, but it wouldn't happen all of a sudden. It was still a little vague on what I needed to know to invalidate the bet. I didn't come that close ever again, and Joe was right. After the first 100 years, things were better. I hardly heard about the show at all, but it flared up from time to time when I least expected it. It was at the 200-year mark that I questioned my existence. I had went through 4 different identities, 2 sets of families. All I ever had was the work, and even that was wearing thin. The movie started running at Holovid cinemas, remastered and even reformatted to create 3D representations of the original cast, every single one of them long dead ghosts of a lost era. Knowing that I had an out-mated barrel, it was my own private cyanide pill that drove me another 100 years. The bombs dropped. The civilization I was striving to better collapsed, and the loaded gun humans constantly pointed at the Earth's face was finally fired. It took me at least a year to pull myself out of the rubble of the building that collapsed on top of me, and by the time I had emerged, there wasn't a soul in sight. The Earth was crushed and scorched. Anything that was recognizable as anything was ground into faded memory. For the first year, I searched for survivors, but 5 years down the line, that was no longer my concern. Now, all I do is scour the earth to find the remnants of the chains of Oakenwood. Anything that would end it. I lived 10 years of not seeing another human face but the one I saw in my reflection. But I found signs of life. It was dark and stormy in the ruins of Colorado when I saw a solitary light out in the mountains. I followed the illumination like a moth, cleaving onto hope that anything was different. After I checked through the rubble, I saw the light coming from the solitary bunker. It was the first man-made light I'd seen in years. I peeked in the reinforced shelter, and who did I see other than Joe? I hadn't seen those 100 years before the Earth was destroyed. Joe saw me in the pouring rain with my wily beard and smiled at me. He hadn't changed a day, even though it may well have been 400 years in the future. I, too, hadn't aged, but my soul was beaten down into oblivion from harsh living. Oh, hey, you made it. I'm ready to see the movie. I'll bet you are, Joe said through the thick bomb shelter window. I told you what this life entailed. I don't want to live alone and broken on a barren rock. I understand what you're saying, but unfortunately the bet hasn't changed for me. It was never about you, and I told you that up front in the beginning. I want to die, Joe. Just tell me what happened in the show and let me die. I've shot myself in the head, jumped off of cliffs, and all it does is give me mild discomfort. Sorry to hear it, but I'm coasting through this bet, and when I'm done winning, I'll let you end it. How much longer? Oh, I say 10,000 years. I dropped to my knees in futile desperation as I saw Joe walk back to the TV, bathed in its eerie, eternal blue glow. I knew this show would never end. Tough luck there, buddy. Well, Maurice Monroe, signing off.